Have you ever felt that the deeper you think, the more distant you become from those around you? That the more you seek truth, the more the world resists your insight? If you have, you are not alone. From the beginning of time, those who think deeply, who seek wisdom beyond the surface, have been misunderstood, feared, and even rejected by society. The world has always been suspicious of those who see what others ignore. But why? Why does society reject deep thinkers, and why do those who seek wisdom often find themselves walking alone? The answer lies not just in human nature but in the spiritual battle for truth. Throughout history, wisdom and understanding have been both a blessing and a burden. The Bible itself warns us that wisdom comes with sorrow. In Ecclesiastes 1 verse 18, Solomon writes, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow, the more knowledge, the more grief." Why would one of the wisest men in history say such a thing? Because to see the truth is to recognize the brokenness of the world. To understand deeply is to realize that most people do not want to change. They prefer comfort over truth, illusion over reality, and so, those who are wise, those who seek truth, are often set apart, not by choice, but by the very nature of their understanding. But this separation is not a curse, it is a calling. Like this video, share it with your loved ones, and comment God, "Give me wisdom." To receive His divine knowledge and understanding. Throughout history, those who have seen beyond the ordinary, who have challenged the ways of the world, have been treated as outcasts. Joseph had dreams of greatness, but his own brothers hated him for it and sold him into slavery. Moses had divine wisdom, but Pharaoh resisted him, unwilling to hear the truth. Daniel had understanding beyond his time, but he was thrown into a lion's den for refusing to conform. Jesus himself, the very embodiment of truth and wisdom, was rejected, mocked, and crucified. Why? Because wisdom challenges power, because deep thinkers disrupt the system, because those who seek truth expose lies. And the world does not easily forgive that. When someone is physically stronger, people admire them. When someone is wealthier, others may envy them but still respect their success. But when someone is wiser, they make others feel small without even trying. This is why Jesus said in John 15 verses 18 to 19, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world." Deep thinkers, seekers of wisdom, truth speakers, you are not of this world. Your understanding does not come from culture, from trends, or from human approval. It comes from God Himself. And because of that, the world will not easily accept you. But do not be discouraged, because though wisdom may set you apart from society, it brings you closer to God. There is a reason why so many who seek truth feel isolated. The more you understand, the harder it becomes to ignore the brokenness around you. You see lies being accepted as truth. You see corruption disguised as righteousness. You see people choosing darkness when light is right in front of them. And the most painful part? Most people don't want to know the truth. They prefer the illusion of safety rather than the reality of change. This is why the prophets of the Bible often lived lonely, painful lives. They saw too much. They understood what others ignored. And they were ridiculed for it. Jeremiah, known as the weeping prophet, spoke the truth to a nation that refused to listen. He saw the coming destruction of Jerusalem, yet instead of being honored for his wisdom, he was thrown into a pit. Elijah, one of the most powerful prophets, performed miracles by God's hand, yet he fled into the wilderness, crying out in despair, saying, "I am the only one left." Jesus, the Son of God, came to bring salvation, yet he was betrayed, abandoned, and crucified by those he came to save. If you feel alone in your pursuit of truth, you are in good company. But here is the good news: God never abandons those who seek Him. Wisdom comes with a price. But it is a price worth paying. Jesus said in Matthew 7 verse 14, "But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." The path of wisdom is not for everyone. The desire to seek truth will make you different. The decision to walk in righteousness will cost you popularity, but what is gained is far greater than what is lost. For while the world may reject you, God will embrace you. While society may misunderstand you, heaven rejoices in you. While you may feel alone in your thoughts, you are never alone in God's presence. Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, wrote in Proverbs 2 verse 6, "For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding." True wisdom is not found in the world, it is found in God, and when you seek wisdom from him, you will see beyond deception, discern truth from lies, walk in divine purpose. This is why Paul tells us in Romans 12 verse 2, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." To think deeply is to be set apart, to seek truth is to walk a narrow road, to follow God is to reject the lies of the world, and while this road is lonely at times, it is the only road that leads to true life. If you have ever felt misunderstood, if you have ever felt alone in your thoughts, if you have ever felt like your wisdom sets you apart, know this: you have been chosen. You are not meant to be like everyone else. You are not meant to think like the world. You are not meant to follow the crowd. God has given you eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to understand. And that is a gift, not a curse. So do not be discouraged when the world resists you. Do not shrink back when others reject the truth you carry. Do not fear being different, for you are walking the path of the wise, and in the end, the wisdom of this world will fade away, but those who seek God's truth will stand forever. The world has always feared those who see too much, who think too deeply, and who refuse to accept things at face value. This is not a new struggle. From the earliest days of humanity, wisdom has been both a gift and a burden. It has opened the eyes of those who seek it, but it has also separated them from those who prefer to remain in ignorance. Deep thinkers, those who seek truth beyond the surface, are often labeled as strange, difficult, or even dangerous. But why? Why does intelligence, more than any other kind of superiority, provoke discomfort? The answer lies deep within the nature of humanity itself. People fear what they do not understand. When someone is physically strong, others may admire them or see them as protectors. When someone is wealthy, others may envy them but still aspire to their success. But when someone possesses deep wisdom and understanding, their very presence becomes unsettling. Wisdom does not just introduce new ideas, it forces others to confront their own limitations. A person who sees truth cannot easily be deceived. They do not follow the crowd without question. They challenge assumptions, ask hard questions, and refuse to accept falsehood simply because they are popular. This is why wisdom often leads to rejection. The Bible is filled with examples of those who walked this difficult path. Consider Noah. He was given divine wisdom, a vision of what was to come, and a command to prepare. He built an ark in obedience to God while the world around him mocked and ridiculed him. No one wanted to hear his warnings. No one wanted to believe that destruction was coming. They preferred their ignorance, their comfort, their illusion of safety. But when the flood came, their laughter turned to cries for mercy. Or consider the prophets. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, each of them was called to deliver messages that no one wanted to hear. They spoke truth, yet they were rejected, imprisoned, or even killed. Not because they were wrong, but because people hated the truth they carried. Jesus himself, the very embodiment of wisdom, was despised by those who claimed to be righteous. The religious leaders of his time could not accept his teachings because they exposed their hypocrisy. They were so blinded by their pride and desire for power that they could not recognize the Son of God standing before them. This is the reality of wisdom. It does not always bring admiration. More often than not, it brings resistance. The truth is uncomfortable. It challenges the status quo. It calls for change, for humility, for self-examination. And most people would rather hold on to their illusions than face the hard reality of truth. But wisdom is not just about knowledge, it is about seeing things as they truly are. It is about discerning the deeper meaning behind what is happening in the world. It is about recognizing that what appears strong is often weak, that what seems wise is often foolish, and that what is temporary is never worth more than what is eternal. This is why wisdom is often lonely. A deep thinker may look around and see people consumed by trivial concerns, chasing after things that will not last, arguing over matters that do not truly matter. They see the distractions, the deceptions, the false securities that people cling to, and they realize how fragile it all is. They see the spiritual battle beneath the surface, the unseen forces shaping the course of history. They understand that behind politics, behind culture, behind the movements of the world, there is a deeper struggle between light and darkness, between truth and deception, between God's kingdom and the forces that oppose it. And yet, despite the loneliness that wisdom often brings, it is a gift beyond measure. The Bible tells us that wisdom is more valuable than gold, more precious than jewels. It is the key to understanding God's ways, the foundation of a life built on truth. Proverbs 9 verse 10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." True wisdom begins with God. It does not come from the world, from universities, from books alone. It comes from seeking the one who created all things. It comes from humility, from recognizing that without God, human understanding is limited and flawed. This is why the Bible also warns that the wisdom of the world is foolishness to God. The world values intelligence that serves its own desires, knowledge that builds wealth, power, and influence. But true wisdom, the kind that comes from above, seeks something greater. It seeks righteousness. It seeks truth. It seeks to align itself with God's eternal plan, and because of this, wisdom often comes at a cost. It may cost popularity, as people prefer those who tell them what they want to hear. It may cost comfort, as seeing the truth often means carrying the weight of understanding. It may even cost relationships, as not everyone will accept the truth, and some may turn away rather than face it. Yet, despite all this, wisdom is worth the cost. Because while the world may reject those who see deeply, God does not. While society may resist those who challenge its illusions, heaven welcomes those who seek truth. Jesus promised that those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled. He assured his followers that though they may be persecuted for truth, their reward is great in the kingdom of heaven. He reminded them that the world's rejection is not a sign of failure but a sign that they are walking the same path that the prophets and saints before them walked. And so, to those who have ever felt isolated because of their understanding, to those who have ever been dismissed because they think differently, to those who have ever struggled to find a place in a world that does not value truth, take heart. You are not alone. There is a reason you see what you see. There is a purpose for the wisdom you carry. And while the world may not always understand you, God does. Do not be discouraged when others resist the truth you share. Do not shrink back when your wisdom makes others uncomfortable. Do not doubt the calling that God has placed on your life. Because the world may fear deep thinkers, but God uses them. The world may reject those who challenge its illusions, but God equips them to lead. Wisdom is not a curse, it is a responsibility. It is a light in the darkness, a fire that cannot be extinguished. And though it may set you apart from the world, it draws you closer to the one who holds all truth. So walk in wisdom. Stand firm in truth. And remember that even if the world does not understand you, God sees, He knows, and He honors those who seek Him above all else. There is a reason why wisdom often leads to loneliness. The more a person understands, the more they see the world for what it truly is, temporary, flawed, and filled with distractions that lead people away from what matters most. The wise do not chase after what the world values because they recognize how fleeting it all is. The world teaches people to seek pleasure, status, and wealth. It tells them that success is found in being admired, in fitting in accumulating more. But wisdom tells a different story. It reveals that none of these things can satisfy a soul that longs for something deeper. This is why those who think deeply often struggle to find a place in the world. They are not easily entertained by meaningless conversation. They do not feel fulfilled by shallow pleasures. They see beyond the surface, and because of that, they feel like strangers in their own society. Jesus Himself experienced this. He walked among people who were blinded by their own desires, who cared more about their traditions than about truth. He spoke words of life, yet many refused to listen. He offered them something eternal, yet they rejected Him for the sake of temporary comfort. In John 8 verse 32, Jesus said, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." But freedom comes at a cost. Truth is not always welcomed. It disrupts, it convicts, it calls for change. And many would rather remain in chains than embrace the discomfort of transformation. Deep thinkers, those who see beyond the distractions of the world, are often misunderstood because their values do not align with the majority. They are drawn to things that have eternal significance, while others chase after things that will soon fade away. This is why Solomon, in all his wisdom, wrote in Ecclesiastes 1 verse 14, "I have seen all the things that are done under the sun, all of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind." He had everything, wealth, power, knowledge, yet he recognized that apart from God, none of it had real value. He saw what so many refuse to see, that without God, even the greatest achievements are empty. But what happens when a person carries this kind of wisdom? What happens when they see the truth while those around them refuse to look? They become set apart, not because they want to be, but because wisdom changes a person. It shifts their priorities, alters their desires, and opens their eyes to things that most people ignore. A deep thinker may find it difficult to engage in ordinary conversations because they are no longer satisfied with surface-level discussions. They may struggle to relate to those who live without questioning, without seeking, without wondering if there is more to life than what they see. This is why Jesus told His disciples in Matthew 7 verses 13 to 14, "Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. The road of wisdom is a narrow one. Not everyone will choose it. Not everyone will understand it, but those who do will find life, true, abundant, eternal life." Still, wisdom does not mean isolation. God never intended for His people to walk alone. Though the world may not always understand, God provides relationships that are built on truth, on shared faith, on a common pursuit of what is eternal. Elijah thought he was the only faithful one left in Israel, yet God told him that there were 7,000 others who had not bowed to idols. Paul was imprisoned for preaching the gospel, yet in his letters, he constantly spoke of fellow believers who stood by him, who encouraged him, who suffered alongside him for the sake of Christ. Even Jesus, though rejected by many, had disciples who followed him, friends who loved him, and a Heavenly Father who never left his side. God never leaves those who seek Him. He does not allow His people to walk their path alone. Though wisdom may set a person apart, it also draws them closer to the only one who truly matters. And this is the great paradox of wisdom: it may cause a person to feel like an outsider in the world, yet it also leads them into a deeper relationship with God. It may separate them from temporary pleasures, yet it brings them into eternal joy. It may make them feel different, but it also makes them whole. For those who seek wisdom, who desire truth, who long to understand more than what the world offers, the journey will not always be easy. There will be moments of loneliness, of rejection, of frustration at seeing what others refuse to see, but there will also be moments of clarity, of purpose, of divine encounters that make every sacrifice worth it. The road of wisdom is not meant for everyone. But for those who walk it, it is the only path worth taking. The road of wisdom is not an easy one, but it is the only one that leads to true understanding. The more a person seeks truth, the more they realize how few people truly desire it. The world is filled with distractions, with empty pursuits, with fleeting pleasures that promise happiness but never satisfy. Those who think deeply see through these illusions. They recognize that much of what people chase, wealth, status, approval, is nothing more than a shadow, a vapor that disappears as quickly as it came. This is why the Bible tells us in Proverbs 4 verse 7, "The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it cost all you have. Get understanding." True wisdom is costly. It requires sacrifice. It means letting go of illusions, rejecting false comforts, and embracing the reality that most people would rather ignore. It is a gift, but it comes with a price, the price of being different, of walking a path that few are willing to take. But for those who choose wisdom, the rewards are greater than anything the world can offer. The world may offer temporary pleasures, but wisdom brings eternal joy. The world may offer popularity, but wisdom brings purpose. The world may offer comfort, but wisdom brings peace, the kind of peace that nothing can shake. Jesus knew this. He walked this path before anyone else. He was wisdom in human form, yet he was rejected by the very people he came to save. He spoke truth, yet he was hated for it. He offered life, yet he was crucified, and yet, he never turned away from wisdom. He never chose the easy road. He never abandoned truth for the sake of acceptance, and because of that, he overcame the world. This is the promise for all who seek wisdom, that though the world may resist, though the journey may be lonely, in the end, truth will prevail. God does not abandon those who seek Him. He does not ignore those who desire wisdom. He strengthens them, guides them, walks with them through every challenge. This is why in James 1 verse 5, the Bible says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." Wisdom is not something a person must carry alone. It is a gift from God, given freely to those who ask. It is not just intelligence, not just knowledge, it is the ability to see the world through God's eyes. And when a person has that kind of wisdom, they are never truly alone. They may walk a different path, but God walks with them. They may see things differently, but God gives them clarity. They may feel set apart, but God calls them chosen. The world may fear deep thinkers, but God uses them. The world may reject those who seek truth, but God embraces them. The world may resist wisdom, but God honors those who pursue it. And in the end, when all the temporary things of this world fade away, when the distractions disappear, when the illusions are gone, wisdom will remain, and those who have sought it will stand, not alone, but in the presence of the one who is the source of all truth, all knowledge, and all understanding.